Cool. Okay, then. Well, I'll do this one fairly quickly then. Like I said, I'm not sure where you guys are in terms of your React knowledge, whether you've never touched it, whether you've learned a bit, or there's a chance you might even know more than me. So this is just going to be the things that I wish I knew, I guess, a year and a half ago when I first started looking at React. Okay. I mentioned this talk to Valentino, my colleague, and they said, what would you say to someone that was just starting to learn React? And he said, start sooner rather than later. And the reason for that is the sooner you start looking at React, assuming this is the way you want to go, the quicker you'll be able to understand it and be able to make some progress in it. And the reality is, unless I'm mistaken, most projects and companies actually use frameworks now. So once you've got that sort of JavaScript knowledge, then it's time to start looking at the framework. And, it could be React, Vue. I have a feeling Angular's going to be phased out, but it's take action now is basically the moral of step number one. There's going to be 10 of these, and there's an extra bonus one. So I'll go quickly. Next one, know your JavaScript fundamentals. This is where I struggled. Is I probably jumped into React a bit quicker than I should have done, in as much that I thought I knew all the JavaScript fundamentals, went into React and thought, oh, hang on a minute, I don't even know what map, filter, and reduce are. And I mention these three because they get used a lot everywhere. And these are what's called I think they're called higher order functions. So map, filter, and reduce. It's really worthwhile knowing what these are, what they do, and why you would even need them. Because one of the things I realized when I got into React is when I was looking at the code, I couldn't tell which was React code and which was just vanilla JavaScript. So it took me ages to separate. And I had a JavaScript roadmap and I had a React roadmap. And then I would just have a look at those lists every time I was learning. Okay, what do I need to know? I need to do that. I need to do that. And I would slowly work through them. So although I say jump in to React sooner rather than later, knowing the JavaScript fundamentals and map, filter, and reduce are just the ones that I realized were important, but understanding things like async await and promises and things like that are also in there as well. Number three, use the official documentation as what we call the single source of truth. And I mentioned this one because when I was doing my learning in React and a lot of other stuff, I was looking at Stack Overflow, I was looking at YouTube tutorials, and sometimes they are not the best place to get answers. A lot of the time they are, but they might be either outdated or incorrect or not as efficient. So what I've realized is, whichever language or library you're using, use the documentation as the first thing to go to, because they're the guys that wrote the code. They're going to tell you exactly how you should be using it and where you might be getting some errors. So I spent a lot of time writing inefficient and incorrect code when I could have easily just used the documentation, which I now realize is amazing. So I do that whenever I'm learning something new. That's the single source of truth. Just go there first.
Sorry, I got to jump in here.
Yeah, go for it.
I have to reiterate what Sam is saying. And you guys and girls have all heard me say, read the documentation. When you see an error, read and understand what that error is, and keep reading it and keep trying to read it and understand it until you really understand it. So often we see an error, we think we know what it is, we try something, doesn't work, try something else, we get a different error, try something else, get a different error, and you end up just wasting a lot of time. Just read and understand the errors and the documentation, and you'll make your way forward faster.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, a lot of the time I didn't read the documentation because it looks boring. It's just basically just loads of text, and you think, oh, I'm not going to read that. I'm just going to watch. There was one guy I used to enjoy on YouTube. He was funny. He was entertaining. So I'd always go to his videos first because it was more intriguing than to read a boring document. But as Ted said, it's the best place to go.
Yeah, you could also try reading El Quijote, in Spanish from 300 years ago or 500 years ago or whatever it is. That talk about dry and boring. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress.
So yeah, on a similar topic then, stay up to date with the latest version of, React in this case, or whichever, library you're looking at. Because when I first started looking at React, it was around the time that hooks were just starting to come in, and I didn't know the difference between, on the screen here, you've got a class component on the left and you've got a functional component on the right. I didn't realize at the time. Well, basically, class components are a lot more complicated to a newbie, and I tried to learn class components first, and learning about life cycles and component did mount, component did update, and all these crazy phrases, which they're not obsolete now, but they're just done in a better way. So once I realized that I could avoid these complications and just use functional components, that made my life a lot easier. So being aware of the latest version and what features that has, because it makes your life easier. Because if you're spending time, writing out that code on the left when you could easily just do the code on the right, you're missing a trick, as we would say. Okay, number 5, gone back too far. So yes, number 5, again, use a roadmap. So this time I used one specifically for React, and I'll put a link to one in here, and I'll share the slides after. This is what a roadmap can look like. It's got everything listed that's worth looking at. Again, get someone else to look at it. If you've got someone who's a lead developer or a senior on your project, you don't need to learn everything on this roadmap, because some of it won't be relevant. Some of it you won't need for the project. So having someone who knows which parts are more important is a great way of saving you time and energy, basically. And again, I mentioned JIT learning, which is just in time. So again, don't worry about learning Chakra UI if you're not anywhere near, learning how to work with component libraries. You're jumping too far ahead. Okay. Number 6, build more projects in React. This is something I probably didn't do, because when I was learning my concepts, basically my mentor would set me little challenges just to learn about like REST APIs or connecting to Firebase and things like this, working with authentication. I did a lot of those projects using vanilla JavaScript, which with hindsight, I probably would have been better building in React, because then that would give me more, I guess, realistic experience that would have helped me more coming into this job. And by doing more projects in React, you'll understand how components work and how hooks work. And I guess the main concepts you'll need to learn to be able to like refactor and split components up, kind of like the diagram. Like everything in React is a component, and you can make it one big component, or you can make it 3 different little ones, but you still need to work out how to connect them all together. And if you do split them up, you need to be able to lift up state. And also building more projects in React means you get out of that tutorial hell that I mentioned earlier. So you'll be able to understand yourself what's happening and how everything connects, rather than blindly following someone else do the coding for you. Number 7, get good at the main hooks. Again, with hooks, I think there's probably about 7 or 8 that are listed in the documentation. But as Ted said to me in my interview, make sure you understand use state and use effect, know why you need them and when to use them as well. It took me a while to understand. Like I could code a use state thing, like a hook, but I wouldn't really know why I was doing it. So once you understand why you would need, I guess, component state, then you can plan a task better. You can understand. There's a lot of other hooks that I found are less common, and I don't think I've ever used use memo, use context, use ref. I don't think I've ever used these in all the projects I've done in the last year. That's not to say they're not any good. It's just, again, think of the just-in-time learning. I don't need to know how to do them, because I won't need them, basically. So just focus on the most common concepts first, and you won't need to know all the hooks. It's good to have a quick look at them, but in terms of understanding them. Number 8, learning the common React errors. This is something that Ted mentioned a while ago, and if I remember rightly, I actually brought this document up in my pair programming coding test with Ted when I was doing the interview, because I got stuck. I broke my React component, and I was like, oh, this is embarrassing. I don't know what to do now. And I fired up this document that had, it was my debugging and testing document. So what I did whilst I was learning React was made a note of all the errors I would get, and have a strategy to deal with each one. So this is basically a screenshot from the document, which I still use today. And you can see the one in bold at the bottom, cannot read property of X. Like that's probably one of the most common errors you'll get in React. And if you know what that means, then you can easily find out where you've gone wrong. But that took me months to figure that out because I would kept getting the same 3 or 4 errors, but didn't know what they meant. And by understanding the call stack and common solutions to these errors, it makes your life a lot easier because it saves you having to go to Stack Overflow and try a few different solutions. It's like, okay, there's that error. I remember that from last time. Look at my document. This is what I need to do now. Wicked, fixed. Number 9, get good at using forms. This wasn't, I think it was on my roadmap years ago, but I never really spent the time doing it. And what I've realized now I'm working for a company that builds actual software is how, I wouldn't say important, but how common forms are, like creating an input, capturing that data using state, and then sending that data somewhere else. So this is something I would recommend, to anyone who's looking to get a job as a front-end developer, because it's something I had to learn on the job because I didn't realize how important it was. And I guess that's when you have a roadmap, I probably should have put forms higher up on the list. So being able to, create something like you see on screen at the moment, a couple of input fields, some of them are numbers, some of them are strings, create a button, what happens when you click the button. These are really useful things to learn. And also validation. So preventing users inputting incorrect stuff or, making sure you're collecting the right format of the data that you want. Almost there. Number 10, don't neglect CSS. Might sound a bit of a weird one, but again, this is where I struggled. Is after a while of being in the job, my React was pretty good, my JavaScript was pretty good, but my CSS, I struggled. Like I didn't learn the basics basically. I followed loads of tutorials, but I really had to go and spend some time working out how to understand how Flexbox works, what are the main CSS things you can use to lay out a page. Because I knew all the individual, okay, well, this changes this changes this. But when it comes to laying out a page, that's where I struggled. And the reality is, as a front-end developer, most of your job will be, here's a design, create this for me. So if you know how to split a page up into little divs and boxes, then that's great, because that's something I almost skipped over it. I was like, yeah, I know CSS. I'll go and learn JavaScript now. But I never really solidified it. And I had to go back just to be able to do page layout was the main thing. I knew all the individual CSS things, but not how to do a page layout. One of the sites that I used was called Front End Mentor, which basically gives you designs. And there's a lot of free ones on there, and it gives you the design, it gives you the assets, and it says, right, see how close to this you can get. And that really, a bit like building in React, build using CSS as well. Okay, how do I get that box there? And what happens when I make the screen smaller? I want that box to go underneath. These kind of things. So not really relevant to React, but don't forget that CSS is part of front-end life, unfortunately, because it is a pain in the backside. Final bonus one. Again, it depends on what level you're at, but things looking at the importance of like Redux and global application state. Redux was the hardest thing I had to learn. It was probably harder for me to learn than React, in all honesty, because there's so many different parts of it. But whether you're using Redux, I think MobX, and there's a few other new global states available. This may make no sense to you right now, but once you learn that, everything else is basically easier. This is what Valentino said. He said Redux will probably be the hardest thing you learn, but then anything else after that you can pick up, you'll be able to do quite easily. And the other thing is destructuring. Again, might not mean anything to you now, but it's quite useful to understand how to do that. And the final page is, just a reminder that, you can learn anything. Just be patient with yourself, and good luck to you all.